Okay, are we good on this? Okay, now what's the next question? Let's read the next question. The next question says, okay, explain two factors that determine, right, explain the factors that determine whether devaluation of a currency such as the Icelandic krona would turn a current account deficit into a surplus. What factors that determine whether the devaluation of currency such as Icelandic krona would turn the current account deficit into a surplus? Now, what is this question talking about? So it's saying that what conditions need to hold true in which the devaluation of krona would result in balance of payment surplus for Iceland, right? So what is this relationship talking about? So what type of concept is this talking about? Do you remember we talked about this? Let's see if you remember. Exactly. Excellent, right? So I'll quickly give you a recap of what Marshall-Lerner condition is, and it is yes, Marshall-Lerner condition is a concept that says that weak exchange rate will improve the balance of payment of a country given what? Given it has more elastic demand for exports and imports, right? So Marshall-Lerner condition says, let me write it down over there. Marshall-Lerner condition says, students, listen to this carefully, states that of a country's exchange rate would improve its balance of payments given P from deficit to surplus, given, now this is the most important thing, given the demand for its exports and imports is more elastic. And imports is more elastic. So students, are you getting me? Right? So this is what the question is talking about, that what conditions need to hold true. Okay, we can do that. But right. So I'll bring you an essay question, and tomorrow while doing an essay questions, that will be directly related to how to control inflation and how to control balance of payment. We'll talk about that. Right? Okay. So students, is it making sense? So Bob, I was saying that tomorrow I'll get you some good essay questions that are directly related to these topics. And while attempting those questions, I'll tell you that, what you need to know. Right? Is it simple? Okay, nothing about the students. Let's come back. So the question is saying over here that, right, states that depreciation of a country's exchange rate would improve its balance of payment from deficit to surplus given the demand for its exports and imports is more elastic, right? Okay, now students, have a look at this. Do you remember we looked at the graph which is known as J curve? You guys remember or not? Right, so J curve is graph that explains what Marshall-Lerner condition is. J curve is a graph that explains Marshall-Lerner condition. So first of all, in this question, you will write what Marshall-Lerner condition is. Then, if you remember this graph, it would be better that you can also make this graph, right? So you say that initially you start off with the deficit. So you're starting off with the deficit, and slowly and gradually, your deficit is becoming into a surplus, right? Are you getting me? So this is exactly what the question is asking for. Let's read the question one more time. Have a look at this. The question said, explain what factors determine whether the devaluation of currency such as the Icelandic corona would turn the current account deficit into a surplus. So first of all, you will say that if the country's exports and imports are more elastic, if the country's exports and imports is more elastic, then it will convert the deficit into a surplus. Then you can also make the graph to show what happens, that at the start there is a deficit in the country's balance of payment, and then exchange rate starts becoming weak, and with weaker exchange rate, slowly and gradually the deficit converts into a surplus, right? This being said, then you should ideally also give some more explanation. Think about this. This is exactly the strategy that China pursues. So what does China pursue, right? Will turn deficit if its inflation is lower than neighbors. True, true. That is another thing that you can say, right? Yes, that's correct. Inflation should be low. What about the quality of goods? Because think about it, inflation rate is too high that it offsets the benefit that you get through devaluation, then there's no point. Inflation of the country should be lower than the other competing countries. Okay. Comparative advantage. Yeah, if you want to take the name comparative advantage, you can say that. Yeah. So quality should be good. Quality and variety. Think about this. Pakistan is one of the countries that always have weaker exchange rate, right? So we are one of those countries which always have weaker exchange rate, but we never see a lot of improvement in our balance of payments. Why? Because we do not have, firstly, our inflation rate is very high, which offsets the benefit that we get from any benefit that we get from the exchange rate, that is offset from the high rate of inflation that our country faces. First thing. Second thing, quality and variety, right, should be good, right? So China benefits from devaluation. Why? Because they have such good quality right now, nowadays at least. Quality of goods should be high, which means that countries want to import from you. And another thing that's very important is more variety of goods, because if you do not have, you are only exporting few goods or wide range of goods, then your balance of payment will not increase drastically, obviously, right? More variety of goods to export. How many of you are clear on this, students? Any confusion, anything that you did not? Right. We don't have much variety. Yeah, exactly. Right. We are mainly focusing on agricultural goods and all that stuff. Right. Right. Okay. Now, this being said, so this is all what you have to explain. Arbab, did you get me or not? Arbab, did you get me or not? Higher exports can be a point. No, that's correct. No, that's correct. But what factors will help you get more exports? That is the very point. Abdurrahim, what factors? Because think about this. Have a look at this question one more time. Explain what factors determine the devaluation of a currency, such as the Icelandic krona would turn the current account deficit into a surplus, right? So for that, you were supposed to say, right, that firstly, you explain the Marshall-Lerner condition. Secondly, right, you explain the Marshall-Lerner condition, right? You explained the Marshall-Lerner condition. Then you said that there should be more variety of goods for the country to export. Then the inflation rate should be lower than the competing countries. And then you said that, inflation should be low, quality should be high, and there should be more variety of goods. Is this clear? Any confusion so far? Right? Okay. Now, for the last part, consider whether the cost to an economy of managing its exchange rate outweigh the benefits of such a system. Now, that's a very interesting question. Okay. Now, students, I want you to contribute to this question. Question says that whether the cost to an economy of managing its exchange rate outweighs the benefits of such a system. Okay, now let's talk about this, right? Now, what are the benefits and disadvantages of managed exchange rate? Technically, the question is asking you about managed exchange rate pros and cons. Managed exchange rate pros and cons. Okay, now opportunity cost is a disadvantage, yes, but can you explain a little bit more? Pros and cons. Can you explain me a little more? Pros and cons. Yeah. So, right? Okay. Now the first pro is reduces uncertainty, right? So what is the biggest advantage of free floating exchange rate? That it creates a lot of uncertainty. Reduces uncertainty. In exchange rate fluctuations. Right. Government can spend the money on providing some more merit goods rather than managing exchange rate. Exactly. Right. Or a better way to put this would be foreign reserves used to manage the exchange rate could have been spent to pay off your international debt, because we did talk about this, that your foreign currency reserves are very precious. Foreign reserves could have been used, reserves, like in Pakistan's case. If Pakistan is wasting its foreign currency and maintaining its exchange rate, it should better spend that money on, on paying the international debt. Foreign reserves could have been spent on paying loans, right? Okay, does it make sense? Are we good? Okay, what else? Anything else that comes to your mind? 4 marks, right? So we have explained 2 sides. I mean, ideally, we are done, right? Because 6 marks, sorry, my bad. Consider whether the cost to an economy of managing exchange rate outweigh the benefits of such a system. What else? Okay, reduces uncertainty. So we should write at least 1 more point. Reduces uncertainty exchange rate fluctuations, because 1 mark for identification and 1 mark for explanation. 1 mark for identification, 1 mark for explanation. Right, we good on this? Okay, now moving forward, students, foreign reserves could have been spent on paying loans, reduces uncertainty in exchange rate fluctuations. What else? Any other benefit or disadvantage? Right? Could have been spent on, yeah. Another thing that Abdul Rahim was saying, right? The time spent managing the exchange rate could be better utilized to focus on monetary policy of the country. Right? Are you getting me? right? Government can't address domestic issues. What do you mean by domestic issues? Yeah, I mean, yeah, the other issues that are going on, right? Exactly. Like unemployment, because it can decrease the interest rate as it will affect the supply of currency. Like unemployment, because it can decrease, the interest rate, it will affect the supply of a currency. Yeah, it can't decrease, right? That's correct. Right. True. True. That's a good point, right? So students, think about this. So the question was talking about whether the benefits of managed exchange rate outweigh the cost, right? So you firstly talked about what is the biggest advantage of managing exchange rate. It reduces uncertainty, right? Which means it promotes investment, right? Your local producers will also be more comfortable importing and exporting, right? It promotes international trade. So that is one biggest advantage of uh, managed exchange rate, right? So we have already talked about that. But on the downside, foreign reserves could have been spent on paying loans. So the precious foreign currency reserves that is wasting over here could have been spent on paying loans. The same time, we could have spent, focusing on monetary policy of the country. And you also become bound. You also become bound when you are managing your exchange rate. You might not be able to do things freely. As of the name, you were saying that you can't decrease interest rates. Because you want the currency value to be higher, and therefore that can be a challenge, right? No speculation or fear speculation. Exactly, that's correct. So when their exchange rates are not free floating, no speculation, which means again that's a bad thing. And in the end, you just need to conclude, right? And you can talk about any side of the argument. Just remember, whenever it asks you for your opinion, you can discuss any side of the argument. Consider whether the cost and economy of managing exchange rate outweigh the benefits of such a system. So you can say, I would say that yes, managing exchange rate is beneficial because it reduces the margin for speculation. It creates more certainty in the economy and promotes trade. That's why government should manage exchange rates to some extent. Or otherwise, if you want to argue on the other side of the argument, you could have said that no, exchange rate should not be managed at all because that uses precious foreign currency reserves that could have been spent on other purposes like paying off international debt and so on. Right? Is this clear, students? Is everyone clear on this? Any confusion so far? Are we good? Are we good, students? Right. Okay. So the thing is, as we discussed, can't manage for too long, so it should be left on demand supply. That's another good way of looking at it. Very good. Abdul, perfect. Actually, so students, here's the thing. So what I want you to do is now that what I'll suggest is that we will stop here for today, and then tomorrow we will have a class. I'll try to have it same after 4 5 p.m. Right? I'll inform you in advance. And tomorrow, if you have any questions, kindly bring those questions to class. Any particular topics that you're having problem with. You have already noticed that you want me to do questions on how inflation is controlled and how policies to correct inflation and policies to control inflation, policies to correct balance of payment equilibrium. So I'll definitely find questions, essay questions in which we are able to answer all that in detail. And I'll also explain you a long run aggregate supply tomorrow, right? So tomorrow we can even have a longer session because tomorrow is a weekend now, right? And same we will do on Sunday. Sunday we can have a slightly longer session, right? So I'll see you tomorrow. I'll communicate the time. Do let me know if you guys are available on that time, and then we'll take it forward from there, right? We good? Okay. So students, I'm signing off. Right. We have completed the case study. Another case study, obviously, we can do another case study as well, or we can do essay question, whatever is more convenient, whatever you want to do. Right? Easy? Another one. Definitely we'll do that. Okay. So I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Allah Hafiz.